Hey, what's up, guys? This is Federico Magano from Vast Ocean INC, and today we're going to talk about that horrible, nasty, disgusting thing we call ick or marine velvet, and how to treat it and all that disgusting stuff that does to your fish, to your aquarium. How at least it's so nasty and you don't even want to look at it because your fish are just dying and they're gasping at the tank surface for air. And what the heck do you do when you see it? When you feel like there's absolutely nothing you can do about it? Well, today we're going to talk about that. So to keep the video on the shorter side, I'm going to tell you how to treat it right now. There's only one thing you can do to treat marine velvet or ick. There's only one thing you can do. Seriously, there's one thing you can do, because you're doomed if you don't. If you actually want to save everything, you're not going to save everything. The weakest ones are going to die right away. And the weaker fish are the ones that are getting bullied on, the ones that you shouldn't have in your tank because the other guys are too territorial or, tough, or they're just the king of the tank. And they're like chickens. Eventually the herd's going to die down by the meaner ones. So those are the guys that are going to go fast. You're not going to save because their immune system is just not there because they're too weak. So the way you treat it is simple. The only thing that will treat marine velvet or ick is copper. That's it. There's nothing else. There's no herbal. There's no food like garlic that's going to cure it. You got to use ick. So either you make a hospital tank, take all your corals out, or all your inverts, move them to a different tank, or you take all your fish out, move them to a different tank and put the copper in that tank, or you put the copper in the display tank, whatever you want to do. You just got to make sure you use the copper if you want to save them all. Now you don't have to. You don't have to do it. You could leave them in there and wave it out too. Take the waves as they come, or whatever they say. You can let it work itself through, because sometimes your fish will live. Sometimes, and it's the very hardy ones. The very hardy ones that are eating, that are the king of the tank, the ones that own the territories to your aquarium, those guys are going to live. Why? Because they're not stressed out, because their immunity is good, and because they're eating. So that's the big thing. As long as they're happy and healthy, they're going to fight back that marine velvet. It takes a couple times that they catch it, and then they get an immunity to it. And then after that, you don't usually get it again. But here's the problem. Now that it's in your system, when you try to add new fish, they're going to get it no matter what, because it's in there. Now, for the marine velvet to go away, right, you got to use copper, like I said. Or you wait 3 months or 90 to 100 days for that thing to cycle through to become an egg, then turn into a baby. And as long as there's no fish in there, it won't attach to anything. But here's the hard part. And I don't know if this is 100% true, but I'm not saying that this is, certain or anything. But marine velvet is a dinoflagellate or something like that. I'm not really sure how to say the word. But that means that they can live off the light. So if you do that 3 months, they're not going to go away. So I've seen people do that, put the fish back in, and then they still got ick. So what you really got to do to be 100% certain that that stuff's gone is you got to use copper. That's it. And I've used copper on sand. I've used copper on rocks. You let it go through, run the copper for 3 weeks, 2 weeks. Make sure it's gone. Make sure it's gone. And then you put carbon in the water, or you do a water change, a big one, and you take the copper out. It takes a while to get the copper out, but I've done it in tanks with rocks and sand, and then I put eels and inverts after the fact, and they were just fine. So you can take the copper out of rocks, you can take the copper out of aragonite. I've used cupramine and copper in tanks with the aragonite and rocks, and I didn't see any dips in the copper or anything. You just got to work with it, keep testing, see how much copper's in the tank, and it's fine. You know. Now, do I use copper personally? I only use it if I'm going to have a fish-only tank with like butterflies and angels, and I only use it once I actually see it become a problem. I'm going to tell you why I don't like copper. Because I don't like copper. Usually, I'll let it right out. Because I'm not the kind of guy who's going to buy a bunch of fish that don't go together in the first place. That's where you really screw up, okay? That and not quarantining your fish. But the biggest mistake is adding fish that shouldn't be together in the first place. Like adding different tanks together, different butterflies, different angels, adding angels with other fish because they're so aggressive. If your fish are uncomfortable, they're going to get stressed out and they're going to catch ick. It's that simple. And tangs and angels and butterflies get very sensitive very quickly. You know, they get stressed out really easily. So there's just a little bit of it and they're going to grab onto it like a magnet. That ick's going to grab onto your fish like a magnet and it's going to spread everywhere. So if you're going to have one of those cool fish only tanks that you see on YouTube, that you only see one video of and then it's gone, well then you're going to have to use copper. And I can guarantee you, all those fish full of angels and butterflies and tangs are all using copper too. I'm not hitting on them. I'm not knocking them. I'm just telling you what they do. It's either that or they have a pretty dang good quarantining process. They quarantine their fish in copper before they put them fish in a display tank. But there's so much wrong that can go with that. Because you can quarantine a fish for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever, but there could be one little thing of ick left. It just managed to survive. Goes into the display tank and you're ruined. It's over. It's gonna spread. Your fish are gonna start flashing and scratching, and that's when you know. And those guys are gonna throw copper in the tank because that's all they can do. And I'm not knocking it, I'm just telling you what they do. It's that simple. That's the secret. You have to put copper into the tank once you see that happen, because then it's gonna spread to the weaker ones and it's gonna start from the bottom to the top. It's that simple. So let's see what we talked about. Oh, and then there's I want to talk about the hospital tanks. So here's another huge catastrophe that happens when you start seeing your fish get sick. It's when you just make a hospital tank. Like you just made it. You should have set up the hospital tank before you set up your aquarium. I'm not knocking you because maybe you're new, but now I'm telling you. If you want an upper hand on this thing before it happens, and you're not quarantining your fish, just have a quarantine tank on standby, just so you're ready. So you'll see the real value of that quarantine tank. Have it start cycling already. Put a little rock in there, some sand, hang on the back filter, that's it. Set it up, because you're gonna need it. Eventually, if you're not quarantining, it's gonna happen to you. You're gonna get ick, you're gonna get velvet, it's gonna happen. And I say ick and velvet because I'm pretty positive they're two different things. I've experienced both of them, or one of them if it's one of them. The velvet spreads a lot quicker and it's a lot tinier, it's a lot more vicious. Where ick is like more, bigger white spots, than smaller, and it's not as bad. Now, you want to set up the hospital tank as quickly as possible because you want the biological stuff to be growing in there. You want it to be ready to house your fish. That way when you put the fish in there, when they start pooping and you throw food in there, you have the bacteria to break down that stuff. If you make a hospital tank, it's going to work for the first 2 or 3 days, but once they start pooping, you start feeding them, you're going to get an ammonia spike. And it's going to kill your fish. So it was redundant. It meant nothing. The hospital tank meant nothing. You need to set up your tank, your hospital tank, the same time, even before you set up your display. That way it has time to run. And it doesn't have to be a big one. It could be a 10-gallon tank. Or a 20-gallon, 55 if you can. You can stick a lot of fish temporarily in a 55-gallon. No problem. Couple 2 big 75-gallon hang on the back filters. There you go. So you want to have your hospital tank ready, basically. Because if you don't, man, you're going to get hit very hard by that ick one day for not quarantining your fish. So let's go back to why I don't like copper though. Why I hate it. I hate it because when you're done with the treatment, if it got too hard on them, or because in order for this to work, you can't half dose it. You got to dose it to its fullest level. That's the only way it's going to kill the ick. You really do have to do the top one. It's not going to work halfway. Okay? It's got to be the full dose. To really hit that thing and kill it, it's got to be the full dose. Otherwise, it only kind of like shakes them. And they stay dormant there. And then as soon as you take it out, they're going to come back with the vengeance. Okay? So, you got to make sure that the copper in the tank is at the highest level, and you do it for the correct amount of time. You don't want to go too far, because the farther you go exposing that fish to the copper, the more you compromise its immune system, the more you clean out all the good kind of bacterias inside of it. It leaves them unable to breed. It messes them up too. It really does. Some fish you can't even almost do it on, like wrasses, angelfish, some tangs, they just can't handle them, they just die. They really just die. So how do you treat those real quick? Well, this is the only way you can treat those guys, is you set up a tank just for them with nothing. And you let them stay in that tank for 3, 4, 5 months by themselves. That's it. You set up a little 10 gallon, put that fish in there by itself. Then you put it into a tank after. A display tank that has been quarantined to the max. Everything that's been in there. Then you throw it in. That's it. That's the actual only foolproof way to do it. You have that fish alone in its own tank for a couple months, maybe 3 or 4 months. You see no white spots for 3 or 4 months and you're good. You can throw it into your display tank. But some of those dudes can't take the copper. It's not even worth it. But if you want to try it, it's up to you. You do it. If you have the experience, fine. But I can damn sure tell you that if you're going to say that it's wrong, then you're wrong. You're definitely wrong. Okay, because I know this. So, it's that simple. Now, I hate copper for that reason. It does a big toll on the fish. It leaves them messed up for quite a bit. They don't act the same for a couple months. They're kind of like they're debilitated, or they're kind of beaten down for a while. You know, some fish handle it better than others. Some fish are like whacked out after a while, and then they're really susceptible to bacteria infections and flukes and all that stuff. It really bangs them up. So when you put them into your display tank, you got to really make sure your water parameters are good, because those guys, when they get out of the copper, they're not really that great, man. They're a little beat up. It's like chemotherapy, you know. It's kind of like that. So what you could do is, after you're done doing that time period of quarantining your fish with the copper, is you can do like a week or two of taking the copper out of the quarantine tank and putting some antibacterial stuff in there. But honestly, that's probably just going to stress them out more. So you're better off just having really good water parameters in your system and throwing it into your display tank. Just take care of your display tank. You know, make the water's good. Nitrates is okay, but nitrates and ammonia and all that stuff, make sure it's in check. Make sure you don't have any bullies. Make sure your fish are compatible. Because if those fish get into fights and they get tears and scrapes on their bodies, it's bacteria city, infection city. And that copper debilitates their immune system, so they're not going to be able to have that super strong immune system that fixes those problems for them. It's usually there, not for a couple months. Sometimes I've seen them not even get it back. And that usually happens to butterflies and angels. They don't get it back. You don't. Eventually they just die. So you got to be careful with that. So I think that covers everything about copper, you know, and marine velvet and stuff. In my opinion, anyways. This is all my opinion and my experience. And I've dealt with it. But let's talk about the way I deal with it. Okay, this is the way I deal with it. So, when I see a couple white spots in my tank, what I'll usually do is I actually just wait it out. Like, I don't even care, you know. Usually it'll go away, okay? And it's a lot easier once your tank's been established for a while. So what usually happens is the fish will get it, but they're so comfortable in their tank and their immune system's so strong that it will counteract it. And they'll catch it, and it'll drop, and they'll catch it, and it'll drop, and they'll catch it. If it catch it like 3 times, and they drop it again, usually you're gonna see less and less every time it drops. After the 3rd time or 4th, 5th time, you're gonna see a little bit less because they're gonna grow an immune to it eventually, an immunity to it. I've seen this happen before, and the fish that usually die from it are the fish that weren't meant to be in that system. And what I mean by that are fish that are weak compared to the main ones in there that are thriving in there. So like say you got a couple clownfish that you've had there that are in the center and they're the boss of the tank, and anybody who gets in their territory they chase away. Those are the guys that are gonna live, most likely gonna live. The chromies, the tangs, the little guys like Royal Grommas that get pushed away by those guys, now those are the guys that you can probably lose. You're guaranteed to lose the weakest ones, the chromies and Bangai cardinals, little stuff like that. Fish that mind their own business and stay to themselves and don't have any bullies, those are the ones that are going to live. But those ones that get pushed around easy, the ones that get beat up, those are the ones that are going to pass away. And that's usually what I do. I just kind of let it wave out. Sometimes you barely lose anything. And that's as long as you got a good aquarium fish lineup, that they get along with each other for the most part. You know, they don't really fight each other. You don't have that many in there. You don't have too much of the same thing. Like you don't have too many angels, too many clowns, too many tangs, too many butterflies. You know, you don't want too many of the same thing together because they're always going to be in conflict. And if you're going to have a lot of the same things together, you better sure have a lot of them together. Like cichlids, you want to pack them in like chickens. That's what you want to do. Only the problem is tangs are a lot more expensive than chickens. And the whole idea with cichlids is you replenish them as they die. It's not that easy with tangs, butterflies, and angels. But that's all I want to talk about. Garlic doesn't work. It'll entice your fish to eat, keep them fat, but it's not going to work. Not directly. Not directly. Those herbal things, don't even try them. Save your money. Don't even do it. If you're not going to go with copper, don't do it. Just don't do it. Just let them die. Let them go. Let them go. Let them go the distance. Maybe they'll live. You're going to, whatever lives is what was meant to live. That's what I always say. If a fish is going to die, it's going to die the first 2 weeks after you buy it. If it lives the first 2 weeks after you buy it, then it's your fish. It's going to stay the long run. But for those first 2 weeks that you take it home, don't get attached. Not yet. And don't get mad at a local fish store because your tank got ick because they said they quarantined it. Because honestly, well, I guess you could, if they honestly 100% looked at you in your eye and tell you, oh, it's quarantined or whatever. But there's so much wrong with, like, so much can go wrong with quarantining. They might honestly not know what's happening because it takes one employee. I mean, you gotta have like cameras on 100% of the time because all it takes is one dip of a net from a tank that's infected. The guy might not even know, and he's like talking to somebody, he puts it down in the water. That tank's infected. because he had put it in another tank before. Or somebody who doesn't believe inverts and corals carry ick too, moved a rock or an invertebrate or a coral into that tank that had ick. Yeah, that stuff carries ick too. It may not be it may not be hurt by it, but it has it on it. There's eggs on it. You know, if it was in quarantine for 2 months or 3 months at least, because you can't put invertebrates in copper. So if you're, that's another thing. If you're gonna add rock, live rock, inverts, you have to quarantine those in their own tank for at least 2 months before you can put it in your tank, because you gotta make sure there's no ick on them. And there's no tell. There's literally no tell. So what do you do for that? You get a 10-gallon tank, you put the rock in the water with no light, because some of that marine velvet stuff apparently can live off of light. Your shrimp and your corals and your rocks, you just put them in a 10-gallon tank and you quarantine them. It's that simple. So you can contract marine velvet and ick from things you don't even have to do with quarantining, like fish, the right way. It's a rock or an invertebrate that brings it in. I think that covers pretty much everything about it. If you have any comments or you want to say anything about what I said, or go ahead, put it in the comments. I'll read it. But that's the thing. It's a real big gamble. Super big gamble. You can get it from anything. That's the thing. Make sure you're quarantining your inverts and your rocks too. And you go buy a live rock. Could be in there. That's all I'm saying. It doesn't have to have a fish. That rock was in quarantine for at least 2, 3, 4 months. It's on there. So, what I'll leave you with this is, just be prepared to fight. Don't let it scare you away, because it's a fact of the hobby. It's the worst part of the hobby. But what are you gonna do? You're gonna meet cyano pretty soon too, if you're just starting. That first year, let me tell you something about that first year of the aquarium. There's no getting around it. It's gonna be ugly. A lot of people are trying to get around that, but it ain't gonna happen. And we'll talk about that in another video. But for now, that's my video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll put another one out next Friday. Some more fish talk with Federico. So I'll see you soon. Check out Vast Ocean INC for some more cool freshwater, saltwater products. I'll see you guys at Reeferpalooza in Orlando, May the 15th through the 16th. We'll be unveiling the Cade MP Spectrum. I don't know if you guys know this. This is my big Cade 350-gallon aquarium here. But I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet. I got a couple cool fish like that emperor snapper, a couple groupers, a stingray, a shark. As for now, it's expensive to fill up a 300-gallon tank. I'm telling you. It is really expensive. But yeah, let me know what you think about the video, comments. If you want to scream at me, put them in the comments, whatever. Verbally abuse me, whatever you want to do. I like that stuff. So, I'll see you on the next video. Have a awesome weekend. Happy Mother's Day to all those reefing mothers, fish keeping mothers. I'll see you soon. Happy fish keeping, guys.